Joining us on Nigeria Decides 2023 as we further the conversation on Tinubu's victory and the general conduct of the presidential election on Saturday is Funso Doherty, the governorship candidate of the Action Democratic Congress in Lagos State.
Africa.
Good morning and welcome to the show, African Democratic Congress.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Abati.
The very obvious question. You are running for the governorship position in Lagos State on the platform of the ADC. First, we'd like to have your take on what transpired in Lagos State in the presidential election, National Assembly elections on Saturday, February 25. We are aware that your party, the ADC, is one of the parties calling for the cancellation of the presidential election results. And I think your polling agent at the Collation Center joined the LP, the Labour Party, and the PDP to stage a walkout. What are your grievances and your concerns?
So, I think the presidential elections were a big missed opportunity. I think we had a situation where we had a number of positive factors in place coming into that election. There was a great deal of hope. There was a great deal of optimism. We had quite a lot of interest from people who had not participated in the process before. And everybody came in with this high expectation, fueled, I might add, by the pronouncements and the assurances from INEC. And I think if you look at the mood today, many of those hopes have been dashed. I think that many of the things that were promised, most significantly, the idea that the election results would be available almost on a real-time basis from the polling units, turned out not to be the case, which was a fundamental foundation of that hope. And I think that the inability of INEC to manage that process, to communicate effectively, to take remedial actions when necessary, I think has compromised the belief of the people in the process. I think it is very difficult to draw a conclusion that that process was free and fair. The truth is that we don't know. And ultimately, we think that this was an opportunity to push our democracy to a new level, to deepen our democracy, to take a stand and say that, look, we're not going to act in the interest of expediency, we're going to act in the interest of doing what is right. And I think that was a missed opportunity. And I think, by the way, that at the heart of it is a question of leadership and character.
All right. Okay. So what you're saying is at variance with what the president's view of this election or the past election was. He's said to the president-elect yesterday in Daura that this election or the last election was without problems, without bloodshed, without incidents. We'd spoken about this earlier. So it's quite curious as to the president's position and the positions of parties like yours. Do you think the president was being quite just trying to be the peacemaker or being in the middle just to ensure that people are not aggravated by the circumstances of this weekend? And then again, just to buttress what Dr. Abati said with regards to the Lagos context, I'd like you to speak to that because we cited an example from Ikate Elegushi, what happened there, violence, and then what happened also in Surulere and in Apapa, some parts of Lagos State. I'd like you to share with us what your assessment of the conduct of the elections in Lagos State is and what you're doing to ensure that we learn from lessons from this weekend against 2 weeks when you also go to the polls.
So, I mean, as to the views of the president and what his views are and why they are what they are, I can't really speak so much for the president. He will have to speak for himself. But I think that this is not a narrow view. I think this is if you speak to many people, you'll get this same view. And we all know what we were promised. And we all know what we got. These are facts in terms of the administration of the process. So that disparity is a fact. And a lot of people feel uncomfortable with it and feel that they did not get what they were promised. Now, the president is of the ruling party, and this whole process unfolded under his watch. So that may have something to do with it as well. So again, I can't speak for him, but I think that this is something that is a view that many people hold, and I'm sure you've heard it severally. Now, with respect to Lagos, I think Lagos was not exempt from many of the issues that we saw, and indeed, I would say that maybe Lagos was a flashpoint in some ways because there were many places where elections were disrupted. I personally know people who were not able to vote on that day because they were at the polling unit and the polling unit was disrupted and voting did not occur. And I know someone who came back the next day and there was nobody there. So in my own polling unit, I observed certain things. So first of all, voting did not start till almost 11 o'clock. The people arrived maybe about 10 o'clock. There were people who voted without going through beavers.
What was the reason for this?
I don't know. I don't know what the reason was. But I know people who came back to the polling units, having voted and left, only to come back, discovering that they hadn't done beavers, to do beavers. So I mean, this is clear. And then at the end of the exam, by the way, I left the polling unit that day at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. I left the polling unit. And as at the time I left the polling unit, these uploads that we're talking about could not be done. So I think it is very clear. And, a lot of these things, to some extent, are outside the purview of candidates or even parties in a sense, because at the end of the day, this is what INEC is constitutionally created to do. INEC is a creation of the Constitution for the benefit of the people, and it's an independent commission. That means they are entrusted with something on behalf of the people. And they are empowered by the Constitution to organize, execute, and arrange elections. And so we expect that they will do it, they will carry it out, that they will be competent in doing that work. And that if issues arise, which there's no human endeavor in which issues will not arise, but if issues arise, they should take the appropriate actions to ensure that they maintain fidelity to the mandate, right, of organizing free, fair, transparent elections that the people can have confidence in, rather than prioritizing expediency, which I think is what happened in this case.
Okay, so let me, dig deep into what you said. So the people that you said didn't vote with beavers, then how did they vote? Did they just come and they just...
I don't know how they got to the point where they got ballot papers. But they got ballot papers, and the ballot papers, they put ballot papers. But this is not an isolated thing.
And they didn't use beavers.
See, this is not an isolated thing. If you look at the results, there's almost no place where results are coming in where they do not say certain places were invalidated. And the reason why, overvoting. How does overvoting occur? Basically, it means that the ballot papers in the ballot box are more than the accredited voters on the beavers. So you said it's not isolated.
You said as at 3 a.m. That they couldn't still upload from your polling unit because INEC issued a statement and said a technical glitch. But after that, I think around 7, 8 p.m., they said they started uploading some results. What elections couldn't be uploaded? Was it the presidential or the other elections, the Senate and...
I know for a fact that the presidential could not.
As at 3 a.m.?
Yes, as at 3 a.m. There were about 3 or 4 polling units in close proximity where I was, by the way. And it was only one of them that was experiencing this. And by the way, if you look at it at the aggregate level, on the IREF, as of 2 days after the election closed, it's a very small number, relatively, of results, relative to the total, that had been uploaded to the IREF. Right? So this is quite clear. And I think that, you see, when INEC sat down and planned this election, they said, how do we ensure that these elections are free and fair, transparent, and that they reflect the will of the people? In their wisdom, they said we need to have this electronic transmission from the polling unit. It's in their guideline. It's a fundamental part of what they determined was required to deliver the elections. Now, when you start the elections, and this fundamental pillar pervasively is not there, then you have to ask yourself, do you just, carry on? Or do you take, as a leadership of the commission, you take the tough decision that you need to do to say, look, we messed up, perhaps we did not, maybe this is technical, maybe it's intentional, we don't know, but fundamentally the process that we've outlined is not working. So we need to explain to people and we need to take the right actions.
Okay, let me ask you. Talking seriously, are you still in this race? First, if we start with your manifesto, your agenda for Lagos State, one of the things you said in the course of the campaigns is that you are going to delink Alphabeta from Lagos State. Well, the spirit behind Alphabeta has just been elected president of Nigeria, president-elect. So even if you become president, does it not occur to, governor, does it not occur to you that that's impossible? You said you are going to deal with touts and agberos in Lagos. The same Lagos touts and agberos who are going to become Agbero General, Motor Park Tout General of Nigeria. And I've already been celebrating. You said you reform the public service in Lagos State. How? So, if we look at the elections on Saturday, your party in Lagos State, the African Democratic Congress, ADC, was virtually invisible. It was a race in which they were mentioning Labour Party, which got the majority of the votes, APC, and PDP. So are you still in this race, or you are going to join hands with other people as the candidate, gubernatorial candidate of the PDP in Lagos State was saying yesterday, to see how the other political parties could come together and give, the APC further challenge? Because so that's your agenda, all those things that you were talking about. Let's be realistic. The Agberos in Lagos, they are going. Anyway, this is just my observation.
So I'm glad you asked that question. And my response is this, and it's very simple. It is now even more important that whoever is running Lagos has that as an agenda. You see, Nigeria and any country is a construct that has centers of power and centers of influence. Two of the most prominent centers of power in Nigeria are the national, which is controlled by the president, and Lagos State, which is the largest economy and the largest commercial capital, right? Now, if we have said that in Lagos, we have issues, right, relating to governance, and all of these things that you talked about are governance, alpha, beta, etc., right? And we're saying these things need to be fixed. In the present situation, right, in which the source of those governance issues is moving to the center, you will have a total control of both centers of influence. And it is important for Lagosians to understand that. Lagos is a subnational government. You would have the government and the subnational government controlled, in essence, under the same control. And that would be very negative for Lagos. So my agenda is actually perfect for this present scenario in which we find ourselves. And Lagosians should think about it in that context. And indeed, the next 4 years, it is very important that we have somebody who has that capacity, that resolve, that gravitas to sit in the governor's seat and insist on what is right for Lagosians and push it through and protect the interests of Lagosians. Because if not, Lagosians will be totally under the influence of one entity. Now, that's the first point. The second point which you raised, which has to do with the presidential election, remember that we had expressed support at the presidential level for the Obi ticket, right? It was not a collaboration necessarily in the full sense of it with Labour, but we expressed support for the Obi ticket, right? And so you would expect that our support will be reflected in the Obi ticket, right? So that's partly why you saw what you saw. And you should know, by the way, that a lot of the votes that were recorded under Labour reflect some Labour supporters, many Labour supporters, but also many people who support Obi without necessarily being Labour Party members or Labour Party supporters. So a lot of our support is part of that support that you are seeing supporting Peter Obi. So the situation in the governorship election is a different situation. It is a clearly different situation. And at the end of the day, people will make a judgment at the governorship level as to who they will support and who should be their next governor. That is not a decision that you make by bandwagon effect. No. Most of the things that affect your life are driven by your governor, not driven by, in fact, by the presidency. If you own a business here, if you own a home here, if your children are in school here, if your family is here, all of these things are determined in Alausa and not in Aso Rock. So people need to understand who they are voting for as governor. And we think they're very well positioned and have sold our agenda to the people of Lagos. And we have a demonstrable, verifiable track record of capacity, of character, to let them know that the person they want in that seat as governor of Lagos is Funso Doherty.
All right, thank you. So, I mean, a few things you said that aligns with what Jandor said. He was here on the show yesterday, and he talked about the fact that some of the votes recorded for Labour Party and Mr. Peter Obi were from his party. In fact, he gave a figure of over 300,000. And you're also saying the ADC votes were also counted as part of it, and it should be de-escalated come the governorship elections. But another issue that has started cropping up in recent times is ethnicity. No, I mean, not just in recent times, but has featured quite heavily in this election. And now for the gubernatorial election in Lagos State, it has come up very strongly again. A case in point with the governorship candidate of the Labour Party, whom people are now tracing his ancestry and seeing that his mother is of Igbo extraction and his wife is also of a different ethnicity in a way from the Yorubas and from Lagos State. And people are wondering what to do about that. Is Lagos State a cosmopolitan state where anyone who's lived here, in fact, in his case, his father is from Lagos State, but the fact that he has traces, it's now become such an ethnic war. It is becoming quite a challenge, and I'd like you to speak to this, bearing in mind that your wife as well is Mrs. Funso Doherty as well. So would that come up as an issue, and should that come up as an issue?
Well, his wife is a Williams, right? Yeah, she's not Igbo.
Yes, but she has, her mom is Professor Grace Alele Williams, and they've traced even down to where you're coming from historically, down to your third. In the case of GLV, they have investigated to see if there's any trace at all. So in that case, I wanted you to speak to that, please.
So, I mean, I think the question, and Dr. Abati is right, my wife is a Williams from the Williams family of Ologbo in Lagos, and her mother is from Delta State. But I think that, and my mother, by the way, is mixed race, and partly from Delta State and partly from Delta, partly European. Now, see, Lagos, in my judgment, is cosmopolitan, right? You see, when you trace the history of it, does that mean that there are no people who are indigenous to Lagos? No, we're not saying that. There are people who you can regard as indigenous, people you can regard as non-indigenous, and you give each their respect. You understand? But we're a cosmopolitan society. And by the way, Lagos has a long history of accommodating settlers and assimilating settlers. Many of the people you think of as traditional Lagosians today are also settlers in Lagos. It's just that they settled, 100 years, 200 years ago. So let's move forward. And the truth of the matter is that Lagos is a vibrant community. We need different kinds of people in Lagos to people the respective things that we need to do in Lagos to make us a global champion. If you look at areas where we are leading globally, entertainment, fashion, those are things where, it's you need different, diverse input, right? And everybody is valuable. And people are here, they are contributing to the society. If you live here and you are working in this society and you are part of this society, then we consider you a Lagosian. You are here. You're one of us. You understand? Abide by the law, pay your taxes. That's what it makes up a modern society. Now, the Lagos we are looking for is a Lagos of the future. We have said that our Tiger agenda is targeted at birthing a Lagos in the first world, right? When you go to New York today, do you ask, are you dealing with these issues of who is the New Yorker, or you go to London, who is the Londoner? No. In fact, if you went to London, you might be led to think that maybe Nigerians are the traditional Londoners because there are so many Nigerians there, right? But people need to be able to come here, feel comfortable, have the opportunity to succeed, be prosperous, because that way we build a prosperous society, which is what we all want. Because when we build a prosperous society, prosperity percolates through the economy, and then people can rise and have livelihoods, and it can be broad-based. And this is what has not happened in the last 25 years. We've built bridges, we've built toll roads, and all of this, and we point to all those things. But the quality of life of the average Lagosian has actually declined.
Okay. I want to talk about the deals. And concerning that, it's quite sad that we're talking about the mayor of London, Pakistani, the prime minister of Britain, of Indian origin, the wife of the governor of Ondo State, Igbo woman by extraction. So, I don't know what we're talking about in Lagos. But let's talk about the deals that has to be done. Obviously, Jandor was here the other day, and he said you are all talking. Let me use Dr. Abati's term, how market?
Well, you see, this question of discussions are always ongoing, all right? And, people are always open to collaboration. But I also want people to be realistic and to understand that this is a human endeavor, right? And so it may be the case that some of those discussions lead somewhere, and it may be the case that they don't. This is true in the political sphere. It's also true in the corporate sphere. Many times you start major discussions, they don't. It's a long path to get to the point where you actually reach a deal. And people have certain convictions and have certain motivations that brought them to seek the offices that they seek. So it may happen, it may not happen. What is most important, whether it happens or not, is that every Lagosian who is going to vote on that day needs to make a judgment as to who they believe should be their governor and vote for that person. That, if you have to take one thing away, just take that thing away simply. Assess the people on the ballot, determine who do you want to be your next governor, who do you believe has the capacity, who do you believe has the track record, who do you believe has the character, who do you believe has the interest of the people at heart, who can deliver, and vote for that person, and you've done your own job.
Brilliant.
Anyway, we'd like to thank you very much for joining us, and we wish you all the best as we monitor developments in Lagos State.
Thank you very much.